Hey guys, it's Leo here, and it's been a little bit of a while. So here I have another deck list video for you for Magic the Gathering. And this deck here actually is for the format known as Elder Dragon Highlander, or known to most people nowadays as Commander. And first of all, I would like to say here's the General / Commander Izuri, Renegade Leader. As you can see up there, 1 generic mana plus 2 green mana to cast. It's a 2/2 elf, which kind of clues you in that this is an elf commander deck. And obviously its abilities reside around elves, with the first ability being pay 1 green mana to regenerate another elf, or 2 and 3 green elf creatures I control gain +3/+3 and trample until end of turn, which, if you are not familiar, that is the main ability of Overrun. 2 and 3 green to give creatures you control +3/+3 and trample, which is also in the deck, actually. But so that's the main ability for that there, which can give your elves quite a power up later on. But moving on to other creatures, first I'm going to go with the mana generating creatures, or especially for the 1 costs, known as mana dorks. Here I have Elvish Archdruid, which is, again, 1 generic and 2 green, 2/2, with other elf creatures gain +1/+1, and it adds 1 green to my mana pool for each elf I control, which is quite fantastic, as this being an elf tribal can generate quite a bit of elves. Next is Elvish Mystic, 1/1, 1 green to cast, taps for a green. Very simple. Green Weaver Druid, another 1/1. However, is 2 generic and 1 green, taps to add 2 green. Next is Lifespring Druid, 2/1 for 2 generic and 1 green, taps to add 1 mana of any color. So that's pretty nice. But in this case, I can only use it for green or colorless mana, as per the rules last I know of. They might have changed recently, though. And then, of course, the one that most people would know, Llanowar Elves. Basically the exact same thing as Elvish Mystic. Alright. And then, okay, not quite the last of the mana dorks, but Wirewood Channeler, 3 and 3 colorless, 3 generic and 1 green. 2/2, tap, add X mana of any 1 color to my mana pool, where X is the number of elves in play. So again, basically plays out the same as Elvish Archdruid. And then the last of the mana dorks, Wirewood Elf, 1 and 1 green to add a green, and it's a 1/2. But moving on to regular elf creatures, or to other elf non-mana producing elf creatures. Here I have Bloodline Shaman, 1 generic and 1 green for a 1/1. Tap to choose a creature type, reveal the top card of my library. If that card is a creature card of the chosen type, put it in my hand, otherwise put it in the grave. So nice to get more elves to my hand faster. Copperhorn Scout, 1 green to drop, 1/1. When it attacks, I can untap each creature I control, which is pretty cool. And Defiant Elf, 1 drop, 1/1 with trample, with power-ups, can be pretty darn nice for a 1 drop. Then Elven Riders, it's 3 generic and 2 green to cast for a 3/3. that can't be blocked except by creatures flying and or walls. Well, most people don't run walls nowadays, and, well, flying isn't always common. But, let's see, Elvish Path Cutter, 3 generic, 1 green, for 2 and a green, target elf gains Forest Walk until end of turn. And it's a 1/2, so there's quite a few elves that, I'll often encounter decks that run at least green in some fashion. So that's always nice to have, just to basically make them unblockable. Elvish Scrapper, which is nice to have for a 1-drop 1/1, but also if I need to, I can pay 1 green, sacrifice it, I can destroy an artifact that might not be too nice. Then I have Elvish Soul Tiller, which is 3 green. Not 3 green. 3 generic and 2 green. When Elvish Soul Tiller is put into a grave, I can choose a creature type. So obviously I would choose elves. Shuffle all creature cards of that type from my grave into my library, so I can recycle all my elves when needed. Then here, Elvish Warrior, 2/3 for 2-drop, which is quite nice. Everglove Courier, 2 generic, 1 green, for a 2/1 that I can choose not to untap it, and for the same cost, I could tap it, and as long as it remains tapped, target elf gains +2/+2 and trample, which, to give basically that permanent power up, is quite awesome. Then here's Azuri Archers, 1/2, 1-drop with reach, so that's always nice. Shoot down those flyers, and then when it blocks a creature with flying, it gets +3/+0, so it makes a 4/2 blocker against flyers, which is nice. Then I have Gem Bomb Strider, 1 and a green, and when I cycle it, all elves gain +2/+2 until end of turn, and as cycling for 2 generic and 2 green, which cycling is discard it, I could draw. So most of the time I'd use it for the 4-cost draw, since mana is not that much of an issue. And I'd rather get a power-up for all my elves, even though it's a temporary power-up. Let's see. Gilt-Leaf Seer, 2 generic and a green. For 1 and tap, look at the top 2 cards of my library, then put them back in any order. So that goes quite nice to combo with going back here to Bloodline Shaman, because then I can look at the top 2 cards, put them back in any order, and then I can then choose to tap for an elf, or to get an elf and not necessarily have to risk losing a valuable non-elf card. Alright. And then, of course, Glade Cover Scout, 1-drop 1/1 with hexproof for an elf, so that's pretty nice. And Heedless One, of course, 3 generic and a green, and it has trample, and its power toughness are equal to all the number of elves in play that any player controls. So that's always nice. Can get pretty big pretty quickly. That's Elite for 4 and a green. All creatures able to block it have to do so, so that's nice to distract all your opponent's creatures, so that way you can do a big attack for the win. And when it comes to play, clash with an opponent. So clashing, as you can see on the card, you reveal the top card, and you put it on the top or the bottom of your library, and if the player wins, if the card has a higher converted mana cost. And if you win, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And it already comes in as a 4/2. So yeah, pretty nice for a 5-drop. Nisa's Chosen for 2 green. It's a 2/3. And if it were to be put in the grave, put on the bottom of the owner's library instead. Most of the time, we would be casting that. We would actually be bringing it out with Nissa Ravane, the original Nissa planeswalker for the elves, but we'll get back to that later. Here we have Silhana Ledgewalker, 1 and a green, and it can't be blocked except by creatures with flying. Yeah, it's a little bit damaged. My copy is anyways, and it cannot be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. It's a 1/1, so it has hexproof, basically, but without the keyword ability, which means things that take away hexproof don't take it away. But Stonewood Invoker, it's a 1 and 1 green, and its ability 7 and a green. It gets +5/+5 until end of turn. Again, generating mana pretty quickly, so 8 mana can be spent quite easy, and it's already a 2/2. So, Thornweld Archer, 1 and a green for 2/1 with reach and death touch. So that's pretty nice. Don't have to worry too much about that. Just take out any flyers I don't feel like dealing with. Then I have Timberwatch Elf for 2 and a green. Tap, target creature gains +X/+X, where X is the number of elves in play. So it's a nice power up to something that might get through to, say, being all of them being blocked, or all of them blocking Nat's Elite, or something else that I might give Forest Walk, etc. Alright. Tribal Force Mage. It's a morph creature, so morphing means you can put it down for 3 generic, then turn it up for the morph cost, which in this case is 1 and a green, same as its normal casting cost. And it's a 1/1. But what you generally will want to do is morph it, because when it's turned face up, creatures of the type of my choice, so I would choose elves, of course, get +2/+2, and trample until end of turn, which is quite nice. Trample just instantly goes through. I don't have to worry about blockers. And then Well-Wisher, 1 and a green for 1/1, and tap, I gain 1 life for each elf in play. Again, elf tribal, so that builds up life pretty quick, especially combined with Nissa Ravane's one of Nissa's abilities. Then here I have Wirewood Herald, 1 and a green, and when it would be put into grave from play, I may search my library for an elf, and reveal it and put it into my hand, and then shuffle my library. So basically good for a chump block to search for an elf that I would prefer to have, such as Well-Wisher, or something else such as that. And then I have Wood Elves. When it enters the battlefield, search my library for a forest and put it on the battlefield, then shuffle my library. 3-drop for a 1/1, and searching for the forest. Most of it just creates a chump blocker and giving me an extra forest to advance that a little bit quick. But that's it for the elf creatures. Now let's go on to extra creatures. I have Cloud Thresher for 2 generic and 4 green. It's a 7/7 with flash and reach. When it enters the battlefield, deal 2 damage to each creature with flying and each player. So that's nice to take out some of the smaller flyers that my opponents have, even though at the price of taking 2 damage myself. But there is life gain in this deck, of course, so no need to worry there. And then, of course, you could cast it for its evoke cost, which would sacrifice it at the end of the turn. But so that's pretty great if you need an emergency blocker as well. That would end up dying anyways. So there's always that. And then Jade Mage, 1 and a green for a 2/1. But its ability, 2 and a green, puts a 1/1 green sapling creature onto the battlefield. So extra mana can just sink in for chump blockers and such. And Lumberdot, 2 and 2 green for hexproof 1/1, and whenever a creature dies, I get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Hence some of these other chump blockers, such as the sapling tokens or the ones that have graveyard abilities. And Orange Hydra, I think, 4 and 2 green for 5/5 with trample, and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under my control, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And if that land is forced, put 2 instead. And every land except for one land is a forced in this deck, because this is a mono green deck, so basically every time but one, it would get 2 +1/+1 counters. So that's would build up pretty quickly, starting off at a 5/5. And then Spawn Writhe, of course. 2 and a green, trample, 2/2. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, put a token that's a copy of it on the battlefield. So gets through once, get a token, and then so now there's 2 of them, and such. Hopefully building up for more and more. And here we got Thicket Elemental, another elemental here for 3 generic and 2 green, with a kicker of a generic and a green. And if it was kicked when it enters the battlefield, I may reveal cards from the top of my library until I reveal a creature. If I do that, I could put the creature card onto the battlefield and shuffle all the others revealed into my library. So oftentimes I can use that in combination with ones that will let me look at the top 2. That one that lets me look at the top 2, which was, let's see again, here, the Gilt Leaf Seer. So combine that, use that first, say, for example, then do that. I can combine Thicket Elemental, put that one on top, and then have another really good creature swapped to put it down underneath it, and then I get both of them at once for the price of one, which is pretty awesome. Then, alrighty. Now that said, I have Timbermaw Larva, which is 3 and a green for a beast 2/2, and whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each forest I control. And with all lands being forests but one, it would, when it enters, most likely, assuming I didn't use creature mana for it, it would at least end up getting +4/+4 by it being a 4 cost. And here we have Undergrowth Champion for 1 and 2 green. And then if damage would be dealt to it, it has a +1/+1 counter on it, prevent the damage, and remove +1/+1 counter from it. And then Landfall, so whenever a land enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it starts off as a 2/2. Alright, and the last of the creatures here is Vine Lasher Kadzu for 1 and a green. And yes, it is signed by Mark Teeden, who's the artist, because I went up to Grand Prix in November a couple years ago, and rest in peace my mirror deck, but he signed quite a bit of cards that were in that deck, such as Mirror Matrix and Urza lands. But oh well. So basically as landfall, but before landfall is a thing, where when it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Nothing too big. But let's move on to the mana base. I have Mosswort Bridge, which has Hideaway. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it does, look at the top 4 cards in my library, exile 1 face down, then put the rest on the bottom of my library, and it taps for green. and then I can pay 1 green and tap it. I may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if creatures I control have a total power, or so their attack, 10 or greater. Then I have 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35. I have 35 forests here, making for a total of 36 land. So, pretty decent mana base. But, next one. Shrine of Boundless Growth. 3-cost artifact. Since we're moving on to artifacts now, here's the first of 2. At the beginning of my upkeep, or whenever I cast a green spell, I may put a charge counter on it. Since this is a mono green deck, it will build up counters quickly from each green spell. And then its ability, I can tap and sacrifice it. I get 1 colorless mana to my mana pool for each charge counter on Shrine of Boundless Growth. So, for every green spell I play and every turn that passes, it gets a counter, and then I get that many mana. So the second and last artifact is Star Compass. 2 cost. Enters the battlefield tapped. Then I can tap it and add a mana to my mana pool of any color basic land you control produce, so adds 1 green. And then here we have Enchantments. Abundance. 2 and 2 green. If you draw a card, you may instead choose land or non-land. Then I reveal cards from the top of my library until I reveal the card of the chosen kind. And then put the card into your hand, and all the other cards revealed this way into the bottom of my library. So say I have a lot of land on the battlefield and I don't need more. Choose non-land and go until I get the first non-land card. Pretty simple. Then here's Asceticism. Beautiful card. Love it. 3 generic and 2 green. Creatures I control cannot be the targets of spells or abilities my opponents control. So hexproof without it actually being hexproof. And then I can pay 1 generic and 1 green to regenerate a creature. Hence, Ezuri can regenerate all my elves for 1. But what about my non-elf creatures? Covered by Asceticism. Ezuri isn't covered by its own ability, so he's also covered by Asceticism. Then we have Epic Struggle, which is at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control 20 or more creatures, you win the game. The second of my few enchantments in here. And especially with the other creatures that can produce other tokens or search my library for things, I can then win pretty easily, such as with the Sapperling tokens, or the best way to do it is Nissa Ravain's other ability, so I will come to that shortly. It's a Favor of the Woods. 2 and a green. It enchants a creature, which when that creature blocks, I gain 3 life. So that's another life gain card that I have in here. Then I have Lure. So 1 generic and 2 green. Enchant creature. All creatures able to block the enchanted creature do so. So if I can't get Nazi lead out, I have that option to make everything go for one thing. And then, such as one of my Death Touch creatures. Throw it onto my Death Touch creature, kill everything they have, and barrel through. Here we have Market Festival. 3 generic and a green. Enchant a land, and when the enchanted land is tapped by the mana, or tapped for mana, I mean, the controller of the land adds 2 mana in any combination of colors to his or her mana pool, in addition to that mana that the land produces, so that land would then produce 3. Alrighty. Then I have Quest for Renewal, which is beautiful. I love it. It's what I used in my 5-color artifact deck before I got Unwinding Clock, which then got stolen in that mirror deck. But so it's 1 generic and a green. Whenever a creature I control becomes tapped, such as my creatures that tap for mana, I can put a quest counter on it, and as long as there's 4 more quest counters, I can untap all creatures I control during each other player's untap step. So love it. I can swing, and then untap to have a bunch of blockers. Then I have Retreat to Kazandu, 2 generic and a green. With landfall, whenever land enters the battlefield under my control, I can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or gain 2 life. So it all kind of depends on my situation. And then the last would be Trollhide. So say I don't have Asceticism out yet, I can bring this out, stick it on Izuri, and it gets +2/+2, and then I can cover it by being able to regenerate itself for 1 and 1 generic. Sorry, 1 generic and 1 green. But let's move on to instance. Here we have Crop Rotation for 1 green, and as an additional cost to cast it, I have to sacrifice a land. So sack a land and then pay 1 green to cast it. Then I can search my library for a land card and put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle my library. So it doesn't exactly do much good other than paying for a shuffle, really, because it keeps me the same amount of land that I have. Because all the land is forced, so I don't get to get a new land or anything. But Fog is 1 green, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to it this turn. Or, sorry, to prevent all combat damage, period, that would be dealt this turn. So, say I'm dumb and don't have anything to block with, then that's got me covered. And the next thing I have is Folk Machine. I gain 1 life for each creature I control. So with tokens and other things, I can build up creatures pretty quickly. Gain 1 life for each of those for 2 generic and a green. Love it. Then Natural Connection, 2 generic and a green. I can search my library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, shuffle my library. Reclaim. For 1 green, I can put any card from my grave on top of my library, so I get to rig my deck to get back what I want. Then Tangle Sap, 1 generic and 1 green. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn by creatures without trample. So not as good as Fog, but it gives me another thing in there that can do that. And then here I have Windstorm. Mana cost of X generic and then 1 green. Deals whatever I paid for X. That's however much damage it deals to creatures with flying. So, for those flyers that I don't like, yeah, no, get out of my face. Now, on to sorceries. First, I have Gaia's Blessing. 1 generic and 1 green. Target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from the grave into the library. Then I get to draw a card. And then when it's put into my grave from my library, so say somebody makes me mill it, I can shuffle my whole graveyard into my library. Then, next thing, Natural Spring. For 3 generic and 2 green, target player gains 8 life. So that's pretty nice. Just throw 8 life back out there at me. And then, Overrun, already talked about that. 2 generic, 3 green, all creatures I control gain +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. But, next thing here, so Nissa Ravane. Its first +1, her first +1 ability, after she's a 2 generic, 2 green to cast, comes in with 2 loyalty counters, so add 1 loyalty counter to her. And I could search my library for Nissa's Chosen, which, if you guys don't remember here, was on that 2-cost, 2/3 creature that if it would be to put my grave from the battlefield, put it on the bottom of my library instead. So say I cast it, then block with it, then boom, get it back with Nissa Ravane. Or, Nissa Ravane's other +1 ability is I gain 2 life for each elf I control. So being an elf tribal deck, it's very nice to have. And then the last ability, search your library for any number of elf creature cards and put them on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So in theory, search for every last elf I have. Next turn, since I have more than 20 elves in this deck, I would then win the game with Epic Struggle, which is quite beautiful. And then the next thing I have is Nissa Voice of Zendikar. It's the foil from the dual deck. It's 1/2 green. +1, I can put a 0/1 plant creature token onto the battlefield. Then for -2, so take off 2 loyalty counters after it comes in with 3. I can put a +1/+1 counter on each creature I control. Then -7, which is the same amount of minus as the searching for elves on Nissa Ravane. I gain X life and draw X cards, where X is the number of lands I control. So up to 36. So that's going to be it today for the Ezuri EDH deck. And so the Ezuri Elf Tribal EDH deck, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you like this deck profile, feel more than free to use it, because it runs well, I think. But of course, if you have any improvements for it, such as I need to take out that 1 cost instant, that one for the land, I need to change that out for something else, because I just realized how that doesn't quite benefit me as much as I thought it did initially. But any other improvements, feel free to comment below, and I hope you guys enjoyed. And so this is going to be Leo, over and out.